Welcome back to Dirtbag Baseball Talk, everybody. Jason along with Kirk, and obviously anybody new to the show, Jason is with the Kinetic Arm and Elite Edge Fitness out of the Atlanta, Georgia area, and he's been on with us several times now, and we're building a series out and just talking about informing and educating you all on just how the body really functions in regards to the throwing process in this game of baseball. So, Jason, great to have you back. Heard you had a really good last week or whatever. You've been busy as always, and could be anytime even during this recording where new inventory is coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We got some exciting stuff going on for sure. So good relationships being built. Still great support from the medical community, and now from major league veterans and Hall of Famers, and yeah, it's going well.
Exciting times. That's what you hope for, right? When you're a creator and an inventor and as passionate as you are. So congratulations for sure. So today you and I want to get talking about for the dirtbags out there, really what this ground force, this terminology means and what is really happening when we talk about that in the throwing game. So creating ground force. So can you take the audience through that? What does that really mean? What are we talking about when we hear the word creating ground force?
So we generate power from where our feet touch the ground. So if we think about, we have spikes or cleats. So that helps us to grab the ground so we can apply that force. So if you think about a car with a lot of horsepower, if the tires are slick, you got a lot of power, but you're not going anywhere. So that's a good way to think about, if your foot or lower leg, if you have some things that are shut down or have some instabilities, and we see a lot of devices where you may take away friction from the front or back leg. And that's a really bad idea. So these slide boards under your feet, when you're doing rotational movements, you're jamming joints and you're putting a lot more stress on the connective tissues as well. Not only that, but if you want to truly generate like exit velo or velocity, things like that, there's no reason you should take away friction from where your feet touch the ground. Because if you can't push off, like if the ground's wet, you can't apply that force. So that's what we'll get into is, how the foot functions and why we need the foot and lower leg to be strong, so that we can apply that force, whether we're running, throwing, or hitting.
Yeah, fantastic. So, and I know you've got the lower half of Mr. Skeleton here today and stuff, so the audience can really see what it is that's happening from the feet and throughout the ankles and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, if you want to go ahead and just start showing that, really, because from proper shoe wear or what happened, well, recommended proper shoe wear and just things that we just take for granted because in our part of the world, we wear them or we do certain things every day. And it could be right, it could be wrong, but hopefully after this, they're going to have an understanding of, hey, you know what? I know how to be better, or, hey, you know what? I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. So I always ask people, what did we do for all that time before Nike came along with this piece of plastic? Well, God, I hope we didn't run or walk or anything, right? And you got to have support shoes. So, when you put shoes on a baby, they freak out because you take away all that sensory input. And a lot of clients that I've had, come in, we do some muscle testing with the foot and lower leg. If they wear like a rigid platform, maybe a steel toe boot or a work boot, their feet are, I don't want to say they're dead, but nothing's firing on them. So then we can't absorb and produce force with the foot. So then that stress goes to the hips, the back. So that's why we have all these issues with, hip pain, neck pain, back pain, but also knees. If we're jamming the arch of our foot up in a certain position. So here, like we've got the arch, if we got that arch kind of jammed up so it can't flatten out. So we have like this big toe is kind of busted. So we've got, pronation where it's kind of like a bag of bones and it adapts to that surface. So that's pronation, or you could say, the deceleration of the medial arch. Either way, that's how we absorb force. And then the foot becomes a rigid lever into supination. That's how we get the propulsion. Of course, there's plantar flexion with it. But so we have absorption and propulsion, right? So if we have an orthotic or a special shoe, especially these like stability shoes, limiting that motion, you have to pick up that motion somewhere else up the chain. So a big thing that always comes to mind is I've heard some talks about the thoracic spine, by some, I guess you can call them gurus, people that have a big following. That really means nothing if you have a lot of dysfunction below the thoracic spine. So you've got the lumbar spine, the hips, you got the knees, but it all starts with the foot. So if you're limiting motion down at the foot in some kind of training shoe, or let's say you've rolled an ankle. So like a lateral ankle roll where it goes over to the side, you stretch out the muscles that go along here, these peroneal muscles. And when you have that kind of trauma and that stress, they shut down and you have to turn them back on again. So we'll go over that a little bit later. But I've had, big, strong athlete in here, Tyler Ferguson. He went to Vanderbilt. He's with the Braves organization. He's had a lat tear, other upper extremity injuries. And I've had a lot of guys in that, they've also had lat tears and things like that. And all you hear is people talking about the thoracic spine. Well, when I did some muscle testing and with precise positions, when I tested their foot and lower leg, they couldn't hold any position. So neurologically, they couldn't contract on demand in that position. So they're big and strong. They should be throwing, close to 100 miles an hour, but they're hitting low 90s. So it's kind of like they're standing in a sandbox and throwing because they can't, again, it's like a dragster, a race car. You're spinning the tires, you got all this horsepower, but if you can't apply it and maximize that power from where your feet touch the ground and push off. So that's the ground reaction force that we're talking about. So if you have any kind of issue down there, it affects everything up the chain. And it's similar to when younger athletes have growing pains. I've had athletes come in and they may have, what we would call little league elbow or little league shoulder, and they've had either Seaver's disease or Osgood-Schlatters. So at that tibial tuberosity, the top of the shin, we'll just say the knee or on the heel. So if they have that, they're not going to be able to effectively push off and throw. So the arm gets overstressed, and that's where we see that symptom show up. So foot function is extremely important for all athletes.
Yeah, no question. So let's just, if you can give, I don't think you have Mr. Skeleton right beside you or whatever, but where in location on your body are you talking about when you talk about the thoracic spine? Because I think that's important for the people to understand as well. So they understand from this point down, like you said, is really what I need to get correct, because it's like building a house, right?
Yeah,
put the roof on before the foundation's stable. So
yeah, so
whereabouts is that thoracic spine?
So right between your shoulder blades and right below your neck. So we see, these baseball trainers and baseball PTs, and it's, they become biased and they want to specialize in that area, but specializing in that area doesn't do anything for you if you don't understand how things function from the ground up. So we hear a lot of talk about like scap loading. I don't know what that means. You can't really load a bone. You can retract it. You can retract your scapula, but you can't load it. It's not a gun. It's not you can't charge it like a battery. It's a bone, and the bones are moved by muscles. So for all you fascia lovers out there, read a book, get an education. It's really not that big a deal. Muscles move bones. We'll get on the fascial line training at some point as well. But think about a stack of books. So everybody wants to address what's going on up here, but if this is off at the bottom, it changes the way everything functions. So now the range that bones might normally have in a healthy range, they might be tilted, and now you might be getting impingement, with your spine. They're called facet joints. That's kind of dictates, the structure dictates function. So that might mean you can only get a certain amount of rotation at each joint. So if you're limited in range at your foot, you're trying to make up for that range all the way up the chain. So again, you can be a shoulder expert, thoracic spine expert, a hip expert. But if you don't understand how the foot functions and can impact everything up that whole stack of books, then you're really just spinning your wheels, and that's not getting ground reaction force.
Yeah. And as I hear you talking to that, so the big hot one for throwers, I mean, it's been going for a couple of years now and stuff like that, but the old medicine balls into the wall. As I'm looking at, there is no teachers out there. I shouldn't say no, but I'm sure it's really, really, really limited. And I mean, like 1% is in my mind that are teaching exactly right. As you're doing that, you better be creating that energy to thump that medicine ball into a wall from the ground up. And I can guarantee you that's not happening.
No, and that's
even a ball.
I know I joke about it, but I don't know if somebody was watching a 3-year-old in their playroom throwing slam stuff and thought, oh, athletes should do that. It's really disappointing that strength coaches, especially at the collegiate and professional level, think that chucking and slamming, heavy balls is a strategic way to apply force. I don't know if they know what that means. But elastomers are going to be a much better option, because as you're doing your little, rocking and throwing, you already have that momentum going. So when they're trying to get hip shoulder separation back here, you already have the momentum going. So there's really no torque from back here unless you're maxing out those joints in your spine. And now you're going to start to get some back pain. But when you're jamming those joints, you're going to shut muscles down. So machines are incredible tools, given that the trainers know how to use them. Now we know it's not trendy and simple doesn't sell. But, chucking and slamming medicine balls and throwing barbells around, it's extremely primitive. And it's just blows my mind that, I go to these training facilities and I talk to these, strength coaches and all their fancy degrees, and they're doing nothing with the foot. So they're just developing compensation patterns up the chain. And then they sit there and scratch their head and wonder why these athletes are getting hurt. And they go, you got to stretch more, right?
Yep.
Never mind putting better tires on the car so you can actually put all that horsepower to the ground and get your velocity up and take stress off everything up until, you release that ball. That'd be the more logical approach. But unfortunately, we just want to stick to buzzwords like fascia and stability and mobility and things like that. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? So, okay, then let's talk about some of that stuff. So if you had to recommend some exercises, some drills, some strengthening, and more importantly, or most importantly, before all that, just understanding of what's happening, and that's what we're trying to do here. When you're recommending stuff to your patients or people that you talk to at clinics, whatever, is it age-based, or is it more of when you're starting based in the fact that, because I shouldn't say that either or whatever. I guess it's individually based, really.
Well, if there's a specific need, but there are some incredibly powerful, just basic exercises or movements that will go through a sequence. But with kids, kids, should be playing barefoot. So hopefully their feet, they're getting that sensory input. Their toes are actually being used for balance and to generate force. They're changing directions. As we get older, we're wearing shoes more, especially if you're in a real rigid sole, like a dress shoe or a boot, something like that. And a lot of these turf shoes in baseball, I went from a running shoe to a turf shoe and got plantar fasciitis right away.
Yes.
Because I didn't understand foot function. So I had something holding that medial arch up like this. And then when I took that away, so think about a cast. I've got my foot jammed up in this arch support. So it's kind of like a cast where you're not using those muscles and they atrophy. And all of a sudden I take that away, and I think the load of my body crashing down on the muscles in that medial arch are going to be able to do their job. No, they break down right away. It's like when the big barefoot running craze happened. Had several friends that were trainers, and of course they knew everything, and they went to barefoot running and they're getting stress fractures and tearing ligaments.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious because they didn't stop and think for a second. If I've had external support all this time for all these years, and then I take that away and I try to run, it's kind of, you got to expect that to happen.
Yeah, it makes sense when you break it down like that. That's for sure. So, what type of recommendations, simple little drills? I hate the word to use, simple. What drills would you recommend for players, even knowing that the mass majority probably have never done this, have never really understood it. Yes, they've gone to fitness and training and stuff like that, but before you even get to that, what are some really simple little things they could do in their house they don't even maybe necessarily have to pay for, or they could go out and pay minimal for and get good value from it?
So these, a ton of value in what we're about to do. Every physical therapist that's been one of my clients, and some sports medicine doctors, they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm going to steal these and use them with my patients. And I say, please do, because this is going to help them get better. Because they don't learn in depth about how the foot functions and how that can have an impact on everything up the chain, especially, I've heard some pitching instructors talk about, they want the foot that's on the rubber on like the inside cleat, right?
Yep.
So if you are on the outside, you can use gravity and get a little momentum and then push off. And then you get that push off with kind of eversion and plantar flexion. But if they're already collapsing that medial arch, you're losing the ability to generate. First of all, you get that gravity down, you get some momentum, almost like a leg kick coming down that you can kind of apply forward and redirect that force. So if you're already starting with the medial arch collapsed, you're basically just falling forward. So you're losing out on kind of being on that lateral edge, the side of the foot, then coming down and then pushing like that. So you got kind of this little speed pedal that you can finish and push off with, because that's more momentum you can get that's going to take stress off the arm. So going back to these foot exercises. So I'll move this down here. So we'll go over a couple. And these are some that you can do on your own. So the first one, I'll put the camera here. So you want to make sure you have your knee right here, because you don't want your leg to move at all. All right.
Okay.
So I would recommend doing these on the carpet, because then you get a little bit of friction. So what we're going to do with the foot, you'll have it right here. You'll go out to the side. So we have tibial rotation, right? So we have external rotation and internal rotation. So what we're going to do, we're going to externally rotate, and try this under your desk while you're doing it. A lot of times I'll get a little bit of a cramp in my lower leg because I never go into these ranges. But remember, our muscles function and naturally take us into these ranges. So let's use those and keep them strong so we can build more stable athletes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this tibia straight up and down, and I'm going to make it like I'm pushing sand in with my pinky toe and lifting up my big toe. So you're going to feel the muscle called your posterior tibialis on the back of your shin. Then I'm going to put my big toe down, and I'm going to do eversion. All right. So I'm going to go pinky toe, push sand in, big toe, push sand out. So these are very, very basic things that you can do, especially if you're more prone to rolling your ankle. Now we're kind of working those muscles that are going to keep it more stable. So that's a great one to do. Another one you can do at the field, you can stand up, and then from there, you see how I push my down. So I'm lifting up the outside, and then I'm lifting up the inside. So it's hard. You can't see my whole body, but my shin and my thigh, so my tibia and my femur, they're externally rotating now, and then they're internally rotating.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to pick up this medial arch of my foot, I feel it back here. And then when I pick up this lateral arch, I feel it along these peroneal muscles.
Sure.
And again, when you have a lateral ankle roll going over this way, that's what stretches out and shuts down, which is going to decrease your ground reaction force. So those are some very simple ones. And then you can progress to maybe going up on one foot and then down and then up and then down, just like that. But starting on two, but again, just the basic hand on the shin. And then from here, inversion, big toe down, eversion, just like that. So I would say start out with maybe 15 each way. And then as you progress, you can start to push down on the floor a little bit more to get some more friction.
Okay.
So gradually increase the amount of friction, but just doing those basic movements is going to improve your foot function quite a bit. So again, you never really take that structure, the foot and shin, into those ranges where the muscles shorten that much.
No.
So yeah, so when you do it, you might cramp up a little bit. I always do. But definitely give it a shot and do maybe do 15 each way. So that way, again, back on the foot here. So we're doing inversion with the pinky toe, big toe down, and pushing out and doing eversion, just like that. And then the other one we're going to roll. So now you can kind of see on the skeleton how the joint works. When we push this medial arch down, this tibia internally rotates, and so does your femur. And then when the medial arch comes up, it's going to externally rotate, right? So that's why. So that should kind of give a good visual on if my foot can't effectively flatten out, then I'm not going to have that internal rotation. So this is important to have, because if we don't have proper function at the foot, we're going to try to compensate and make up for that with the hip. So a lot of times that's why athletes have tight hips. Now, a lot of the assessments I've seen done are extremely inaccurate, but if you actively internally and externally rotate and compare sides, when you're laying on your back, then you can see, okay, this hip is having an issue. It could be coming from the foot. So it's just another reminder of, the foot and the hip are going to work together, and the knee is kind of stuck in the middle. So sometimes when you have knee pain and it's, not from contact or trauma, it could be potentially from dysfunction at the foot or the hip. And also, if you don't have that internal rotation at your hip, so your femur, if you don't have that, but the foot is internally rotating, it's going to be a lot of torque on the knee. And that's probably why a lot of non-contact ACL tears happen, because of that big limit in hip internal rotation. The foot's free to move, but the hip is kind of jammed up. So something's got to give.
Yeah.
But again, I see these guys. I saw a physical therapist playing with a water bag, and he's a physical therapist, and he's doing the hashtag fascia. And it just blows my mind that they're overstressing these joints, and they're supposed to have a higher level of education. Well, a lot of this stuff you have to apply common sense. And then with that slide board where, call it the scissor whatever, it's just a basic understanding of anatomical function. So to put somebody's back foot on a board and tell them to swing, and then internally rotate the tibia, I've seen somebody pop off their patellar tendon like that. So think about that before you take the friction away from your back foot. And oh, by the way, you'll see the hitter's whole body down that straight line shift forward. So if you take away that ground reaction force with this little board that you're putting back there under your foot, how are you expecting to get, first of all, rotation? Your hip's not going to rotate through, but then, you're just jamming a multitude of joints up the chain, and you're doing a lot more damage. So why would you decrease your power and increase the stress on your structure?
Yeah.
Because a big social media following, so they must be an expert, right?
Well, that's it, right? And it comes back to what we're trying to do here, right? To get them to always ask that question, why, like you say all the time. Ask it a million times a day. Ask it until, and if they don't give you an answer, walk away.
Absolutely.
Walk away.
Or message us.
Yeah.
I'll give you the most unbiased. I don't care if I hurt your feelings. I do care if your arm gets hurt. And I feel like a lot of people are out there, ripping off athletes and parents with these products that are causing more structural damage and leading to injury. And there's zero common sense or application to, that product or methodology. We see these, I don't know why these water bags are all the buzz now. And I don't know, next they're going to have people, pro athletes chucking water balloons at each other because it's you're training with water.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's stay on that point right there. To look at you do that simple little drills, the two of them really combined, the in out for starters, and then the rolling in and out. It looks simple, but you hit the nail on the head. We're actually starting the process of something that we could probably guarantee that the mass majorities have never even thought about, let alone do.
Right.
With a conscientious effort in mind. So even though Jason said roughly 15 or whatever and stuff like that, don't be locked in on that. There's a great point or place to start. But you're right, because of it being new to your body, and you will get irritation or reaction of saying, hey, wait a minute, my muscles work and I've never really thought about making it work like that before. I'm sure you would sit there and say, hey, if Kirk isn't able to do 15 the next day because it's a little bit tender, a little bit sore, well, then back it down. Maybe you do 10 the next day until you build it back up. It's basically how the body's doing it. But I think it is something that you could do every day.
Absolutely. And then you can always, if you wanted to increase the volume and the friction on the ground and kind of press into the ground a little bit harder, that's the great thing is you don't need any fancy equipment. And we're not violating, structure. This is the way your body moves. We just never really take it into that range, but let's tune it up. Let's get those muscles functioning how they should so that you can generate more power from the ground, get that ground reaction force. And that's going to take a lot of stress off your arm.
Yeah, no question about it, for sure. And like you said, especially for younger players out there, parents of younger athletes out there, be really careful, because as Jason showed you with the skeleton foot, you got a lot of bones in there and they're working in tendons and everything. You're starting to get educated on what's really happening in there and what's all involved with it. But you're right. You hear about this growth plate to no end, right? And that's really respecting that. I think you got to be able to respect that fact that you don't overload those joints on what appears to be something that's simple to Jason. It's really not a simple thing. It has to be respected, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. And one of them slipped my mind. I really like this one too. So if you've been, if your feet are jammed up in kind of a rigid sole, one thing that's great to do is let's see the best way to look at this. You can reach out. Can you see my toes?
Yep.
Reach out and try to pull sand in.
like that shin splint drill.
I haven't seen it. I don't know what that is, but from here, from the side,
Yeah.
if I reach out and I'm trying to pull sand in with my toes, so then I'm getting everything on the bottom of my foot, all those toe flexors. And again, you're pushing off with those toes. You use those toes to balance. If you're, in the batter's box or you're on the pitching mound and you become the slightest bit off balance as an athlete, you can feel that you have to make that kind of, the brain's got to orchestrate that last split second solution. So the stronger your toes are, and again, you get a lot of sensory input there, and it helps with balance, and balance equals power. So that's another really, really good one to do. So same thing, I'd start out doing it maybe a couple times a day, or, if you're sitting in class at school and you got shoes where you can move your feet, or just kick your shoes off, go ahead and, do that while you're sitting at your desk, waiting to go out for, high school or college practice. Or if you're a pro guy sitting in the clubhouse, while you're waiting, go ahead and turn everything on. That way it's ready to use when you hit the field versus, stretching everything out and you're shutting it down and then you're supposed to perform. And, that's why the injury rate keeps going up.
Well, there you go. Right. And what Jason just showed you, that's where the throw starts. We realize we see this happening all the time and stuff like that. We get that. That's why we're trying to take the time to really educate you what's happening with the body. So it's becoming efficient. And like even Jason said, with the books there, stacking the load and everything else, you're right. It doesn't matter. You can be really good, but if the rest of the body's not functioning, at some point, you're still going to break down. So let's get it functioning, as Jason likes to say, efficiently from the ground up.
Absolutely. And if anybody has, if you know how to tape your ankle, or you have like an ankle immobilizer, put that on your back leg and try throwing hard. And then you'll really realize how much that ankle, I'm not going to say mobility, I'm not going to use buzzwords, how much it matters to have everything functioning efficiently. Everything that crosses that ankle joint does, the plantar flexion eversion. You're going to find out real fast, like, wow, I can't generate nearly as much power when that joint is immobilized. So
that's a great call.
Yeah. Or, kind of tape your toes together, do something like that and play with it. If you're unsure of, if that would really matter. And then when you immobilize those joints and see, wow, if I can better control the muscles around that joint and produce more force, every little bit helps to take stress off your arm.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. For sure, because again, it's all just part of educating you personally and stuff like that. And to give a good example, to throw one out there would be Max Scherzer or whatever and stuff like that. I'm not saying he does this stuff. I assume he does this stuff, but our whole point is there's a guy that's intense for Max Scherzer. And I think that's part of it. I don't think he wants to come across and be a hard ass, pardon my language, but I think he wants it. So Kirk feels uncomfortable coming up to him. Mark Pryor is his pitching coach now with the Dodgers, feels uncomfortable coming up because, hey, if I'm going to get this, I need to know it in my own mind. I know I don't want to hear an overload of confusion and a bunch of crap. Let me figure it out. And so that's why I bring it up or whatever. And that's what Jason just gave you, a bunch of really simple but powerful little drills you can be doing. And like you said, you can do it in school, you can do it at home, you can do it watching the playoff games today, you can do it wherever and stuff like that. And you can take away and you can add to the friction, like you said, smooth floor. Well, it's a smooth floor. So grass, a little bit of resistance, carpet, a little bit of resistance, right? So great stuff. And I know we're going to carry on up the leg as we move forward and stuff like that, but I think that's a great place to stop for today, Jason, because again, at Dirtbags now, hey, reach out to Jason on this. Go ahead. Get in touch with him at the Kinetic Arm. Get in touch with him at Elite Edge Fitness. Jason.Colleran, reach out. If you have any questions on it, that's how you're going to keep evolving. He's the man that's going to come to you. He's going to talk to you. He's going to be open and willing to talk to you. That's priceless. So any final thoughts before we wrap it up, Jason?
I'd say another thing with, with some of the things that I'll show, we've got some people affiliated with Major League Baseball teams that are wanting to learn more about this. So don't just think, I don't need to work on my toes, because at that level, they're saying, okay, this really could help prevent injuries, with our guys. So absolutely shoot in any requests. Kirk will be more than happy to make some more demo videos. Love to nerd out, love to, keep athletes healthy. And, Yeah, I could nerd out all day. So I'm excited as we work our way up the chain and share some good stuff with the hips.
I love it. Jason always says the nerd. He's a dirtbag. He likes to get dirty with it, guys. So that's awesome. So appreciate it, Jason. As always, I know you got a busy week ahead of you, be an exciting week ahead of you. Got the new inventory, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, Dirtbag. So hey, if you haven't got on there and started looking at it, get excited. If you're a parent of a younger athlete now, in this inventory that Jason has coming in, I believe it is that you've got the new ones for youth athletes as well, right?
Almost. We got the final sample coming in at the end of the week, but
okay,
we do have the new version with the 3 sizes. So that'll fit down to around 5 feet, 100 pounds, all the way up to, I mean, you see how big Farnsworth is. It's not going to get any bigger than that. So him, Tyler Brown, I mean, we got it on some big, powerful dudes, and yeah, we're really excited.
Fantastic. And that's at www.thekineticarm.com. www.thekineticarm.com. Get there, get all over this thing, and don't be on the outside looking in. Be on the inside. So hey, let everybody else that wants to go through the motions or pay $1 million for instruction for the next 25 years and wonder why they never got anywhere, let them be them. You be you. You be a dirtbag. You lead, you get up, you get after it, and you get dirty, just like we do. So till next time, buddy. Love it. Appreciate it. Can't thank you enough. Be safe. Take care of that wife of yours, and we'll be back here next week, and we'll do it all over again, buddy.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. See you then.
You got it. Thanks, dirtbags. You know we can't do it without you. We do it for you. And again, until next episode, hey, get up, get after it, and get dirty.